What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Now tonight, a lot of you guys are on One and All But live feed, copepods, phytoplankton, and we have the copa god himself on tonight. This is your pretty much official title now. We have Chad Clayton from Reef Nutrition. You are a master of the phyto and the pods. I know you've been doing this for many, many years, and I'm excited to have you on tonight. So appreciate you coming on the stream.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on and chatting with you about copepods and phytoplankton and all other things aquaculture.
No, very cool. So, question for you. I know you've been in this for a long time, just on the hobby wise industry. So, how did you get into this in the first place? What made you decide you want to start digging into these little tiny crustaceans and copepods and start learn how to breed them and culture them? Oh, you're chopping out on me. No.
Oh no!
There you
No,
go.
there
You're
we go.
back.
Okay. So like a lot of other hobbyists, or a lot of other people in this industry, I started off as a hobbyist, and I got my first tank when I was 14, and really enjoyed working with saltwater fish, and decided that I wanted to go to college to learn about marine biology and
Mm-hmm.
aquaculture, and just get a career in in the aquatics industry. I really wanted to breed fish. I started reading Martin Moe's book about clownfish breeding way
Mm-hmm.
back as a young kid, and it just got me hooked. And following Jacques Cousteau and watching all his shows and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went off to college at Florida Institute of Technology and got two degrees, in one in marine biology, one in aquaculture. And then I graduated in 1997 and started working in the aquatics industry. I've done a variety of jobs, working in research on zebrafish, the
Mm-hmm.
freshwater zebra danio.
Yep.
Lewis, doing research on pigmentation and in vitro fertilization. So we're basically, stripping the eggs and the sperm from the males and fertilizing the eggs ourselves and growing them up. So that was really cool. That's
That's
where I
cool.
really had my first hands-on experience with rotifer culture, because we were one of the first labs to introduce live rotifers to the larval zebra danios instead of using paramecium.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also when I started using reed mariculture products, because we just didn't want to grow algae. It was a lot easier to buy it and
Yep.
just use it, and so that was right up our alley, because space is limited in laboratories,
Mm-hmm.
and if you could put a bag of algae in a freezer and make small portions and thaw it out as you go. That was like a dream come true for us.
To be honest, I'm almost half debating that these days because I culture my own Phyto, and it's a lot of work, and once in a while it crashes, and you got to restart it. I'm like, and
Yep.
I mainly do it to feed the pods that I culture. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's absolutely a lot of work. People love doing it. People love growing phytoplankton. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to be able to do that and work with multiple species.
Yep.
But there are some people that are working on such a large scale where they just don't have the time and the money, and so they prefer to just to buy it from us. And so yeah, working in St. Louis, I was there for a couple of years, and I started talking with Kevin Gaines, who was the president of Oceans, Reefs, and Aquariums (ORA) down in Florida.
Yep.
And lucky enough to get a job down there. So in 2002, I moved down to Florida and basically learned everything I possibly could about marine ornamentals, broodstock, quarantining, grow out, larval rearing, live feeds,
Mm-hmm.
sales. Even
Nice.
even there was a hurricane that even came over in 2004, and we had to move all of our broodstock into a hurricane shelter.
Oh
And
wow.
I basically stayed the night with these fish in this hurricane
Huh.
bunker, keeping them alive, keeping them well fed, while this hurricane just passed over, trying to beat down the door. It was crazy.
That is
Um,
a crazy experience. You have a
yeah,
hurricane
but
shelter for your fish and coral. That is amazing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is what we do in aquaculture. We got
Yep.
a great, to protect our animals,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a pretty interesting experience. I'd have to say in aquaculture. And then after ORA, I decided that there was an opportunity for me to grow food fish out in Hawaii, on the Big Island in Kona. So that was just an opportunity I couldn't turn down. It was really unique, a lot of experience to be gained. So I moved out there, worked for a couple of years on food fish, worked with the species of jack, a carangid, and very delicious fish. You could eat the flesh sashimi, and that's when I started working with copepods. And
Yep.
so we were working with a pelagic species that was collected off the coast of Hawaii, and to grow that copepod, we had to work with live algae. And so we had a lot of live algae, and one of the biggest problems was growing the algae and crashes and all these other issues. Because if the algae wasn't growing properly and it crashed, then we couldn't grow copepods and we couldn't feed the larval fish.
Yep.
So you can see where I'm kind of going with this as far as how reef mariculture plays in all this.
Mm-hmm.
And so 10 years ago, I moved off the Big Island to settle down with my wife, who's from California, start a family, started working with reef mariculture, and they put me right on the copepods and have back. So
nice.
I was brought to perfect the techniques with the Tigriopus californicus. Everybody knows them by tiger pods.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been supplying them into the hobby for about 12 years now. We were the first companies to do that. Mm-hmm. And finally got some of the protocols figured out and decided to take on a newer species. So that's the Apocyclops panamensis, nice. Which we're calling the apex pods for the hobby. And this is all the culturing area behind me.
Oh, very cool.
What I've been working on for the past 3 years is trying to perfect techniques for growing these guys on a massive scale mm-hmm. and getting them into bottles, hands, sending them out so they can try them on their animals. And I do a lot of other things, social media, going to trade shows, things like that. So that's where I'm at now.
No, very cool. So with this, actually one of the big things too, I know there's a lot of the fish bans that are coming in these days. There's more and more coming where you can't collect it. So breeding and captive bred is going to be honestly the future down the road. So with this, I mean, having all these live foods available is key to actually making that happen. So that's very cool. It's awesome that it's becoming easier and easier and you're seeing more people doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Never before in the history of man have we had such great access to live feed organisms. Mm-hmm. Clean cultures, multiple species, multiple size types. It's a whole new world. Yeah. And a lot of people that are breeding fish that are landlocked, that cannot do plankton toast for copepods and live feed organisms, mm-hmm. absolutely rely on companies like Reef Mariculture and others to provide live feeds, whether it's a starter culture or to supplement what they're growing if they can't grow enough. And so it's really helping accelerate aquaculture. And also there are more people now that are specialists mm-hmm. in live feeds that really know what they're doing, can grow these animals reliably, can grow them at high densities. Because without the phytoplankton, without the copepods, the live feed organisms, you're not breeding anything.
Yeah.
There are some food fish species and larger species of fish that you can start on dry diets. But when it comes to pelagic spawners like tangs and angelfish, mm-hmm. These animals require very small live feed organisms. They have to be alive because this is what these animals have co-evolved with. They've co-evolved with live feed organisms. Mm-hmm. And so when they see them moving, that specific movement, they can hone in on them and eat them. Yeah. So yeah, it's really good to be a part of aquaculture, be a part of that movement.
That's awesome.
And my goal is to make sure that, copepods are in every hatchery across the world, that they can be grown economically, highly dense cultures, and people can work nice. On a variety of species that they've had issues with in the past and, get better survival and whatnot. So yeah, it's really cool to be a part of that.
No, that's awesome. And honestly, like in the future, I'm sure that's going to help make a ton of new fish come back into this hobby with all the stuff, not be able to collect in certain areas anymore. Now, I mean, I culture my own pods too, which I'm sure are like babies from your pods way back in the day, because I all started with your guys' pods in a bottle. So I got your offspring.
Nice. My kid.
Same. Even with the phytoplankton, same thing. So yeah, it was very, very cool. Whenever it crashes, I'm gonna go back and pick up your guys' stuff and restart it, and it works really well for me. So
right on.
I'm pretty happy. Now, for people doing it, when I met you at Reef Clues in Orlando, you guys also had like a Rotifer kit, like a thing to help people culture rotifers. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Thing. Yeah, so it's basically a 5-gallon bucket with a fitting that contains a piece of filter floss mesh. Mm-hmm. And so the problem that people always have had in the past with rotifer cultures is waste management. Mm-hmm. Because rotifers are asexual breeders. They breed clonally. They're all females when they're happy and healthy, and they can literally double their density daily. And we're talking plague proportions when it comes to rotifer culture. And so you can imagine a culture, a 10-gallon bucket, getting out of control with rotifers really fast, as long as they're being fed well. Mm-hmm. And so density gets bigger. They're producing a lot of waste. They take up a lot of the oxygen. Those cultures will crash. Mm-hmm. You'll hear people use that term, my culture crashed.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is come up with a way to alleviate the waste issue when it comes to rotifer culture. And of course, there are other problems that people have had in the past, but waste buildup and waste management has been one of the biggest ones. It's just like with a reef tank. We've got skimmers, you've got filter floss, paper, you're doing water changes, all of these things to get organics out and to keep the system clean so your animals maintain good, healthy, and reproductive or whatever you're doing rates. And so this fitting is really nice. It is an airlift. And so there's a rigid air stone down the column, and you guys can go to our website and watch a video about this and see the illustrations. But basically the fitting is an airlift. So air rises up through the column, creates a vacuum, pulls the water through the floss, and traps the waste over time. And so the floss it behaves better when it's dirtier. So as it gets dirtier, it collects more waste. It'll collect the dead rotifers. And that way you can get the waste out every day, rinse it off with a garden hose or at a sink or whatever, and just put it back in. And so that was one of the key components of the system. The other components are proper aeration and feeding, and we also provide that as well. The RG Complete is our microalgae blend that also has an ammonia neutralizer and a pH buffer. And so nice. This is for people, it's like the training wheels.
That's actually a good idea. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and so
awesome.
it takes care of feeding the rotifers, getting them to reproduce. It actually enriches them also, and it provides water quality stability. So it's an all-in-one feed. And so in conjunction with the bucket, properly harvesting the rotifers, you can produce a lot of these animals every day. You know, some people are producing 5 to 10 million rotifers a day out of our system, which is nice. Very, very economical. If you're considering just one bucket, you can put it on a counter anywhere, run a simple airline to it. You don't even really need to heat the rotifers unless it's, you're dropping below the 70s where you're working. And then you remove the rotifers, you screen them out, you put them in clean salt water, and then you feed them to your animals, whether it's larval fish or it's corals. And we have clownfish breeders and marine ornamental breeders that are using this system. And now we're hearing people using it for corals. You can feed them to SP corals, things like that. So this is something that we are really promoting this year. We're sending out a standard kit with a coupon so that people can get free rotifers and free RG Complete. Nice. We're trying to get stores to grow rotifers too, to not only feed to their corals and their own fish, but to sell them like they do brine shrimp.
Yep. No, that's very cool. Is there any chance you have one near you? A couple of people asking if they have one you could see. It's on the website, but
I do not have one with me.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'll put a link in the description after to the page where it's on, so you guys can check it after the stream. So I know the one big chunk of it is for fish breeding, but I don't really breed fish. I mean, back in my freshwater day, I bred some Daniels and different things, but in saltwater, I mainly use it because I like for NPS corals, and I have a lot of like little mandarins and pipefish and different creatures that love pods. Those, and even some of the smaller ones, is good for feeding some of the SPS corals, the NPS, that type of stuff, sponges, like small clams. So there's tons of other awesome benefits for corals in the tank. So I tend to just dump some in my tank every couple weeks. But is there any other big things? Like I know your guys' main thing is for breeding, but do you see a lot of hobbyists dosing and benefits from doing it in their tank?
Feeding rotifers to their tank?
Yeah. Or just different kind of pods, different phytos.
What's that?
Yeah, just different pods, phytos, copepods, that type of stuff. Like on more the hobby side of things.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are either buying copepods, from people that are producing them like us out of a bottle, or they're growing their own. And we provide the phytoplankton for them to grow their own copepods.
Yep.
And so the reason why a lot of people put copepods in a reef tank, one of the main reasons is to feed finicky fish like mandarin dragonets, pipefish, seahorses. These animals that are coming out of the wild that refuse to eat anything dead. They just won't take anything dead. They'll take pellets. Some of them do if you work really hard, but most of them are only accepting live feed organisms. They're very finicky. And so one of the big reasons why people put copepods in a tank or seed a tank in anticipation of adding one of these predators is so that when that predator is put in the tank, they have an ample source of nutrition while they're in the aquarium. And then you can try to, if you're very diligent, you can work on weaning them off of those live feeds. Yep. And of course, the tank size means everything as well. A mandarin dragonet in a 30-gallon tank is going to wipe out a copepod population pretty fast. They are vicious predators. They're feeding nonstop. And so are some angelfish and wrasses. These animals are highly predatory on live feed organisms, these zooplankton organisms. And so, the bigger the tank, the better those copepods, better chance those copepods have at populating. And then when it comes to phytoplankton, a lot of people are feeding phytoplankton to their tanks because they have animals that require it. So you have bivalves, clams, oysters, scallops. These animals do very well on phytoplankton. We sell a lot of our algae to people that are breeding oysters and clams. It's a vital component of the diet of these animals. Same with photosynthetic corals, sponges, tunicates, sabellid worms, feather dusters. and also feeding algae to the tank also feeds the zooplankton and the copepods the nutrition they need. And depending on the plankton, you want to offer your animals a blend. And so that's what we are all about, is the variety and blend. And so let's say our PhytoFeast product, if you're using that, there's 6 different species in there, all aquacultured by us. And the reason why we put 6 different species in there is because each individual species of phytoplankton has its own nutritional profile. They are very different from each other. It is remarkable how different they are. And so some are very rich in fatty acids like DHA, these lipids that are good for the brains and the eyes of organisms. They're even good for us. Some that are, very rich in, different amino acids and sterols. And so all of these components are very good when the animal eats this phytoplankton and digests it. It can assimilate all of these things into its body. And so that's the benefit of phytoplankton for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And then the other thing too, I mean, you're feeding the pods. I notice I have a lot more pods than I feed phyto because you're basically giving them another food source to help them populate more, which is going to make the pods more nutritious, which means the fish eat it, they get more nutrition out of them. So it's the whole circle of, I mean, it is the base food source of the ocean, so it goes a long way. Couple questions that are, before I forget about them because they're scrolling by pretty quick. There was one about Oyster Feast, and I think it was Oyster Feast versus oyster eggs, and what's the difference in those?
So the Oyster Feast versus the oyster eggs?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
So the Oyster Feast is oyster eggs.
Okay.
It's oyster eggs and ovarian tissue. It's in the 1 to 200 micron range. The majority of the product is in like the 1 to 50 micron range. And so that's very ideal for NPS corals. Some of these small polyp stonies, Apophora, Seriatophora, these animals do very well. And it also contains a lot of amino acids and lipids. These are all natural things that oysters produce. The cool thing about oysters is that they're out in the ocean or they're being aquacultured, they're being fed phytoplankton. And so phytoplankton are our primary producers, or what we call them. So phytoplankton produce all these really cool things. They produce proteins, sterols, fatty acids. They're full of different amino acid combinations and peptides and proteins. They're full of sterols. And so all of that nutrition gets passed on from the phytoplankton to the oyster, and then the oyster female passes all that nutrition to the eggs, so that the eggs can develop properly and these larvae can hatch and feed off of their yolk until they need to feed off the phytoplankton in the water column. And so these oyster eggs are very rich in these things. And you want to talk about stimulating, we all know how stimulating amino acids can be. I know that they are stimulating the copepods. And so with adding Oyster Feast to an aquarium, you're going to really stimulate your corals with natural amino acids. These aren't extracts, these aren't powders. This is in a liquid suspension, and it's a natural, it's in its natural state.
Oh, that's very cool. Nope, tons of benefits I didn't even know right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like with anything, when adding food to a tank, you always want to make sure that you're maintaining proper husbandry techniques, water changes, you've got your proper filtration. Never ever assume that what goes in doesn't, comes out.
Yeah.
Glass box, when it gets in there, you got to get it out.
Yeah, it's in there for life.
It's digested and assimilated into the organism's body. It gets excreted as waste, and so you got to get it out of there. And so some people that feed Oyster Feast every day. There's some that feed it every other day. There's some people that target feed it or broadcast feed it. And we always recommend when you target feed, you dilute the product so that you don't cold shock your colonies or give them any other stress like that.
Yep, good call. So on the topic of eggs, there's another one asking about the ROE, the real ocean egg. So what is that? What's all in it?
So the ROE is fish eggs.
Okay.
It's and haddock eggs. It's a larger particle size than Oyster Feast, but still applicable to corals. Even NPS corals will eat it, all the way up to some larger animals, that LPS corals, things like that.
Another one. So Raj was asking, I have a large potato growth and I drop in copepods every 3 weeks. Is that overkill? How does one figure population? The filter allows pods to flow through.
Yeah, that's a tough question because every tank is different. I call every tank a snowflake. I mean, there's no one size fits all when it comes to copepods. And so what people typically do is they'll add copepods routinely to supplement an existing population or to direct feed corals or fish, things like that. No guarantee that copepods will populate any tank, period. Don't let anybody tell you that, because there's a lot of things going on in a reef aquarium that people may not be aware of. There's other predators in the tank. there are small animals called amphipods, which are crustaceans that are very much larger than tigerpods and most copepods that you see in the hobby. And amphipods actually prey on copepods. So if you're not feeding the tank often enough with small particulate feeds like phytoplankton and other things, then those animals are fighting each other and they're killing each other in the aquarium. And so to keep them from doing that, you provide habitat, you provide phytoplankton. And one of the other reasons why we add phytoplankton to the tank is because the ones that are growing in the tank naturally, like diatoms and blue greens and cyano and all these other ones, they can feed copepods, but they are not an ideal food source for them. And so you definitely need to supplement their diet. But yeah, it's a tough call with growing macroalgae in a refugium. Some people will allow copepods to populate the macroalgae, and then they'll move it up into the display tank and shake it off into the display tank so the copepods evacuate the macroalgae. But macroalgae is a great habitat. Chetomorpha, good stuff for copepods.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, for doing a refugium, that's probably one of the best ways that I've found to do it.
Absolutely. And you can concentrate the food. When you feed the refugium, it's a more concentrated dose. So.
No, not very true. Okay, now a few minutes ago, somebody was asking about apex pods, and if you could talk about them a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So apex pods are Apocyclops panamensis. I've been working with them for about 3 years now. I've been working with people from the Marine Breeder Initiative, which is a group of people that breed fish, do live feeds, and they post about it. They write reports. They get rewards. There's a point system, so it's very detailed information. And these are just hobbyists doing this. They have full-time jobs, but they're very dedicated. There's a guy, Jim Welsh. There's a woman, Kathy Leahy, Kathy's Clowns in Missouri, and then Gordon Greenlee in Michigan. These are 3 people that really got me thinking about Apocyclops panamensis. Said it's a very hardy animal, very hard to kill, tends to outlast its contaminants, very easy to feed. You don't have to feed it live algae, which was remarkable when I found that out. So I started working with this animal. So I've been working with them for about 3 years now. They've never been fed live algae. So don't let anybody tell you that live algae is better than dead or not.
I'll question on that. Have you noticed any difference between the live and the dead cells? Like, I know the cells are still there. So is there any big difference on the two? Or any animals that care or ones that don't care necessarily?
There are ones that I work with that care. Well, so the Parvocalanus crassirostris, which is the copepod that they used on the yellow tangs out in Hawaii when they got the yellow tangs through metamorphosis, and same with the hippo tangs down in Florida. That species was vital because the size of the nauplii was small enough to fit in the fish's mouth, basically. And so to grow that species of copepod, you have to grow live algae. Isochrysis is one of the best species of algae to culture that copepod on. And so when I found Apocyclops panamensis and started growing them on our non-viable algae, and so I'm going to call it non-viable. Another word is dead. But so I grow it on viable algae. I've been feeding it Nanochloropsis and other species, and it started breeding for me. I started seeing gravid females. They hold their eggs with 2 sacs on their urosome, and I started seeing them breeding. And I was, after about a month working with them, I went and just went screaming into the room for Tim and Lynn Reed, who own aquaculture. Like banging on the door. I was like, "You won't believe this," And so we started working with them. And what I really liked about this animal was not only that it was eating non-viable algae, and was very hardy, but it also eats contaminating organisms. It eats ciliated protozoans. They eat rotifers. They are in a family called cyclopoid copepods that are notorious for this. And there are saltwater varieties and there are freshwater varieties. And the other thing I really liked about this animal was that the nauplii, so that's the larval copepod. So copepods go through multiple stages of development. They go through about 12 different stages. Very similar to how shrimp develop and lobster, crustaceans, things like that. And so what I found was the nauplii was very small. It was about 70 microns. And that's hard to get people, to understand that. It's bigger than the diameter of a human hair, things like that. But we started working with them and realized that this could be an ideal copepod for aquaculture, not just for the hobby. Because Apocyclops panamensis has been in the hobby for a while now. There are other vendors that have been selling them in bottles in retail stores. But we wanted to work on this animal because of its potential significance for aquaculture. And now, after all of these years, people are now starting to use it, and it is becoming very significant in aquaculture. Hub SeaWorld, Javier posted a picture at the MBI workshop with Tamara Marshall of a Centropyge loricula, the flame angel, with its gut full of the nauplii from the pod. So
nice.
It was very, and when people saw that, they were like, yes, this could work.
There's hope there.
We have people growing them and culturing them to feed the clownfish. We've got, we're starting to, we put them in bottles now. So we pack, up to 4,000 animals above 100 microns in a bottle, and we sell them into retail stores. They're an animal that cannot be refrigerated. I've done all the testing. They die after 3 days of refrigeration, so they can't tolerate that. So this is an animal you would find on the counter in a retail store. And I do put a little bit of live algae in there with them so that they have a food source while they're just sitting there on the shelf before somebody buys them and dumps them into their tank. And so that's really what is happening right back here. I've got a 1,000-liter tank where we're trying to produce millions a day. And then I've got these little 60-liter black round tubs where I have my baby copepods, and we mature them in these tubs, and then we use them as broodstock or we bottle them up.
No, very cool.
So what we found with this copepod species is that if we keep the adult densities at a certain level, so let's say 4 or 5 adults per milliliter, what is the key, and this is what Dean Klein found out in Hawaii, the key to this system is to harvest the nauplii daily, strip out the nauplii, passive harvester, and you leave the adults in the tank. That way the adults maintain good reproductive behavior, they reproduce at a maximum. Because what we found with copepods is that if the culture gets too dense, they just stop reproducing. Like Rotifer, and the culture crashes. Whereas copepods have a feedback system, and they will stop reproducing. So
good to know.
Something that was key for me when it came to culturing rotifers, and when it came to culturing Apocyclops. And Roger Williams University, Dr. Andy Ryan, who was at MACNA last year, got a big award. He's done a lot of work with copepods, and it's been very helpful. So I've been collaborating with a lot of these people, and this is a global organism now. We've been sending it we've sent it to different countries. So it's fantastic, and it's great to have hobbyists have access to it.
No, that's really cool. So you separate the small ones, just you leave the breeding adults, which helps them breed more, essentially, because you're not getting overpopulated. Oh, it's very cool.
Yeah, I'll show you the bucket actually. So this is a smaller version of it, and you can see here this is a tube that goes up, and you can see the little tube in the center here. And so what I do is put an airline down in that, and the air comes up through the column, creates a vacuum, so it's an airlift. It puts the nauplii into the screen. This is 90 microns, so it won't pull in the adults. So it pulls in the nauplii, deposits them into this container, and then 6 hours later we pull out the rigid airline and we harvest them. We quantify them with microscopes.
Oh, very cool. So to figure out,
so these units were basically created by the University of Florida. So kudos to those guys for the work they did. Like I said, without all of these people working on copepods, we wouldn't be able to piece all these things together. I can only so much, and I only have so much inventive power in my brain. But thank God there's other people working on these organisms.
No, that's very cool. And it's neat. I really appreciate that there's so many different people in the industry kind of working together in a sense to help advance this, which is really cool to see.
Absolutely.
Okay, so someone was asking, could Chad comment on the food densities in getting fish and fry to feed on the nuclei?
To get them to feed on what?
The nuclei?
Oh, the nauplii?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're talking about feeding them the copepods, the phytoplankton, or
on the food densities and getting fish fry to feed. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, when it comes to copepods, I'm not sure how many per milliliter is ideal. I know that when it comes to rotifers, anywhere from 10 to 20 rotifers per milliliter is ideal. So copepods may fall into that category as well.
Okay.
And so yeah, basically what you have to do, you have to design your larva rearing tank so that you can have an adequate density of life feed organisms, so that your fish aren't swimming around looking for these animals to feed, because it costs a lot of energy to hunt down a copepod.
Yep.
And you also want the copepod to be small enough so that it doesn't escape quickly and the fish can eat it.
Gotcha. Okay,
But
so it's just having enough in there.
figure
The
that-
fish aren't wearing themselves out working for it. Now, to figure out a density, are you literally just taking a drop of water from your culture, putting it under a microscope, and counting how many copepods you see in a little square?
Yeah, so what we do is we harvest the copepods into a graduated container
Mm-hmm.
with at a fixed volume. We'll fill it up to 2 liters, let's say.
Yeah.
And then we take a subsample of that culture,
Okay.
a milliliter, and we put it onto a little counting chamber, which holds 1 liter of liquid. We take a drop of vinegar to fix the copepods. It works really well to neutralize them, keep them from swimming around.
No, cut out internet, come back. All right,
There you are.
you're back. Welcome back.
Right on. So what we do is we count all the organisms in that 1 milliliter of solution, and then we just multiply that times. So let's say you have 2 liters.
2,000.
Times 2,000.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sorry that I'm speaking in liters and milliliters, but this is the way we do it in science.
Yeah.
I'm not doing quarts, pints, none of that. We use the metric system here.
So someone's just asking who in the comments, who doses phyto and pods? Is it really necessary? I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it's definitely beneficial, and your tank will thrive more if you do. Now, a couple people were asking to join. I think Chad's internet's a little in and out, but I will put the link in if anyone does want to come in ask any questions live for the next few minutes here. So I just put it in the YouTube chat, so if you guys want to join, I know Terrence was asking, a couple people are asking about questions, so Chad, are you going to be at MACNA next month? It sounded like a yes. Oh, come on. All right, there we go. I sounded like a yes when you got a bit choppy on us. Yep. Chad, come back. Ah, the power of the good old internet. There we go.
We're at the mercy of technology.
We are. That happens some days. Okay, so did I hear a yes at the start of it?
Yep. We're exhibiting. We'll have a booth.
Okay, that's awesome. Should be good.
Yep. Should be some freebies too.
Even better. Although I don't know if I can bring copepods back across the border on an airplane. Damn. But it should be good. Yeah, if you guys ever use any Chad stuff, the phytoplankton, the pods, I mean, I've used it for start my cultures. I've dosed my tanks. It's awesome stuff. And it's ultra condensed. Like, the amount of cells and actual, like, even your phytoplankton, like, it is thick. It is, like, amazing how much you guys jam into those bottles.
Yeah, we try to put about 40 grams wet weight in the phyto feast. And so that's, it's a little bit goes a long way. And we always recommend people be very conservative when it comes to feeding our algae.
Yeah, no, it's awesome how much you guys managed to jam in there. Hey, Terrence, you joined. I know you had a few questions you want to ask Chad.
Terrence.
I think you answered them already, I think.
Did I get them all?
I think so.
Perfect. On it today. So, okay, another question that I kind of have. So I know in the Phyto Feast you have...
Oh, I did have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Because, Chad's here, like, rattling stuff off like crazy, It's like my head's, like, exploding, right? and it wouldn't be unlike me to want to add a little humor to a discussion here because it's so deep with all this science, So, we're talking about the oyster feast stuff, and Chad knows I like that stuff. Chad came out and gave me a big old, like, monster bottle of the stuff.
Nice.
So if you guys have seen, is it Meet the Parents? Is that what it is? Where he's sitting at the table and he's asking about milking cats and like, how do you milk the cats or something? I have to know which of you have to go in and collect the ovaries out of the oysters. That's what I want to know. How does that happen? You have a lot of little people sitting around like carving out ovaries out of the oysters, or?
Yeah, so we get the oysters in frozen from the East Coast, and yeah, we physically have to separate them. We use a lot of different sieves and things to separate shell fragments and other debris. But yeah, a lot of it's done by hand.
Wow. Okay.
That's That's impressive, actually. It's actually done by hand, and probably a series of sevies to get it all separated out. But
Sevies, is
Yeah,
that
and we
Canadian
tend to make
Canadian for
large batches.
sieves?
sieves, yeah.
So you have a bunch of people going through these, I guess, or one unlucky soul who digs through oysters every day. And then what do you do with the rest of the oyster? Because it's like, is it like, I'm serious now. Like, it's a curiosity. Is this like 1/10 of the mass of a, oyster meat, or is it like half of it when I eat an oyster?
So, so it's like half of it. Yeah, I mean, we don't use the adductor muscles or anything like that, or any other part of the oyster. But we don't get the shells. They come in already, already shelled.
I see.
Just the meat comes to us, and then from there we process it. And we try to. It does come with some shell fragments, but we try to strip out all the shell fragments and all of the larger tissue chunks, just so that we're left with everything below 200 micron.
I see. And then the rest of it just goes into some other feed for something?
No, the rest of it just gets discarded.
Oh, that's too bad. Think of the homeless, man. There's got to be something we can do with that. Got to cook them up, have a big barbecue.
Use it as
Yummy.
fertilizer.
Oyster barbecue. All right, enough of the oyster questions, man. It's a curiosity. How does this stuff come about?
That's fair. That's fair enough. Okay, I have another question around phytoplankton. So I know the phytofeast, you have 5 or 6, 7 different types of phytoplankton all mixed together. Like a lot of my culture's stuff have come from that one. I know eventually one of the phytoplanktons will win out, which I'm assuming is Danocropolis for the most part by the colors, because it seems to be the one that likes to take over eventually. What's I know the different nutrition profiles. Like if someone was only to culture one or have one or two, what's kind of the best all-around ones you would say? For different kind of phytoculture. Oh, internet.
Chad's having troubles there.
Too many copepods.
There we go.
Through the water.
Okay. So a couple of species that I recommend is Nanochoropsis is a good one. That's the green algae.
Yep. I believe that's one of the easier ones to culture too, and that's probably the ones it's taken over, and I just kind of stick with it because it doesn't crash as much.
Yeah, there we go.
Hi.
Yeah, and so another one is.
All right, so
Tetrasomas, Isochrysis, those are also good ones as well.
Okay,
Isochrysis
awesome.
is commonly used in aquaculture. People feed it to bivalves, feed it to copepods. So yeah, those 3 species. And then throwing in a diatom is a good idea too. Catoscerus or the Thalassiocyrus species. Those are also widely used in aquaculture for bivalves and copepods, things like that. So.
Mm-hmm. No, very cool. Oh yeah, good point actually. Someone's just suggesting if you shut off your video for a few and just use the audio if it cuts out, then it should use less bandwidth and still work.
Oh, okay.
Which might be. The internet is quite capable of cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so G. Carroll was asking, how fast will the apex pod population grow under ideal situations?
So it takes them about 14 to 18 days to mature to reach sexual.
Chad. Okay, so we got 14 to 18 days-ish for sexual maturity before they start to reproduce. And we cut out. All right. Okay, Chad.
Oh, we really lost him now.
Yep. Chad. I think all that aquaculturing's hard for the Wi-Fi to get through. All those big water vats around you. All right.
Well,
So
he is out on like a multi-acre facility out near Watsonville, so
top secret facility.
the top secret.
Yep.
Near out towards where I live, kind of.
Is it? Nice. So you can go visit. This is an internet company. All right, guys. So if you do have any other questions in the chat, let me know, and I'll ask them when Chad comes back or when his internet kicks back in. I think if I did miss any, I apologize. Just ask it again. It's hard to kind of keep up with them and a lot to swing by. So
I have a question for you.
ask away.
how do you like even keep up with that stuff? I mean, it's like for me trying to do all these little cultures and something I have to deal with every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, okay, mix this up, make sure this one's not crashing, make sure this one's green, make sure the rotifers aren't too many, got to take some out. He's like, yeah, if you just keep a rotifer culture and just take it out of there, you know, like every day or two, and then it won't crash and everything will be good.
Yeah.
It's like,
so I don't do rotifers because, again, daily is too much effort. Weekly is fine. Daily is too much work for me, so I don't do rotifers. I do have pods, which are probably tiger pods and some other ones mixed in. I started with some of actually the Reef Nutrition's tiger pods, one of the other pod blends. So I mixed a bunch in there. It's probably survival of the fittest. So there's a couple different pods that are left in there. Which one's the good question? I'll have to put under a microscope one of these days. Welcome back, Chad.
All right, yeah, I lowered the bandwidth.
Perfect. So, he just froze. So I heard 12 to 14 days, and then you just struck this lovely smile, and you're just holding it for us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so 12 to 14 days to mature, or sorry, 14 to 18 days to mature, and then for about 30 more days.
Oh no.
This is painful. I should go move back into my office. It'll take me like 5 minutes.
Okay, no problem. We don't have to go too much longer either. Either way.
Okay.
I think we got most of the ones that popped up, but
Okay.
on that note, I mean, we're probably good. If there's any last minute questions, let me know. The internet.
I still have a question for Chad.
All right, shoot.
Okay, so Chad, you know, you guys are the real deal out there. We all know that. Okay, there's a lot of people out there putting stuff out there lately. I saw this ad this weekend, and it just looked like complete hooey. Okay, you seen this? It's like drop an ice cube in a bottle, okay, throw some water in, and you get phytoplankton. Okay, is that even possible? I mean, it just looked like a bunch of hooey.
It is. Yeah. In fact, our nanochlorosis has viability even after freezing. We have customers that have told us about that, and we've even tested it ourselves.
Very cool. I don't know. I've never tried freezing, but I know I've had phyto that has literally been in a bottle in the back of the fridge for like a couple of months, and I've been able to start a culture off of it. So it does stay viable for a long time. So it's kind of cool that it actually lasts through freezing as well. So there you go. Possible. Question from the chat. How do amphipods make their way into the fuge or tanks?
Oh, amphipods are ubiquitous in this hobby. They come in on reef rock. They're pretty much in every pet store across the United States. Mm-hmm. They're the hardiest crustacean animals you will find. They can survive all kinds of, low dissolved oxygen, no food for days. They're coming from all over the world. There's a lot of species of amphipods out there. And so they're coming in through reef rock or even on coral plugs, and people don't even realize it. And once they're in there.
Yeah, on that note about coral ones, like tons of times I got frags off people, and if you dip your frags, I mean, you see them fly off it, and you don't even notice they're on it in the first place. So, anything live you throw in your tank, there's a good chance you're gonna get some in there.
I thought they were good. You guys are acting like they're bad.
They're good.
I thought they were good.
They're good.
Oh, well, Chad was like, you get them from anywhere. Oh my God.
No, I love them.
Okay.
Yeah, but
confused.
Hey, free fish food. What more could you ask for? But on those guys, they literally will find a way in, just with any other type of kind of creatures, and they are beneficial. Life finds a way, especially if you buy anything live, frags, rock, sand, anything could potentially, have their hitchhiker on it. So the internet gods are very loving today. So I think we're probably going to call it for today, guys. Thanks everyone for hopping on. Much appreciated, Chad. Thank you for joining us today. And
fun as always, Devin.
Yep, so good as always. Next week, there will be no stream just because I'm taking the week off and going to be out of town. Otherwise, I'll see you guys after that. Thanks, guys.